In 1056 BC, a man named Uzzah reached out his hand to steady a golden box. The oxen had stumbled. The cart was tipping. He was trying to help. And in that instant, he dropped dead. This was no ordinary object. For 3,000 years, it has remained the most dangerous artifact in human history. Touch it without permission? Instant death. Capture it as a war trophy. Plagues destroy your cities. Open the lid to peek inside? 70 men struck down in a single moment. Kings feared it. Armies fled from it. Priests approached it only once a year, and some of them never walked back out. And then, it simply vanished. No trace, no grave, no explanation. What was this object? How was it built? What made it so terrifyingly powerful? And where is it now? This is the true story of the Ark of the Covenant. The year was 1446 BC. The place, the wilderness of Sinai. The nation of Israel had just witnessed the impossible. They had seen the Nile turn to blood. They had walked through the Red Sea on dry ground while walls of water towered on either side. And now they camped at the base of a mountain that was literally on fire. Thunder rolled, lightning cracked, smoke billowed from the peak like a furnace. The entire mountain trembled so violently that even Moses said, "I am trembling with fear." And into that inferno, Moses climbed, alone. He would stay for 40 days, and when he descended, he carried more than stone tablets. He carried architectural blueprints, detailed specifications for something that had never existed on earth. God's exact words were these: "Make them according to the pattern I showed you on the mountain." Did you catch that? The pattern I showed you. Moses didn't design this. He saw something in that cloud of fire and smoke, a heavenly original. What he was about to build would be a copy, a shadow, an earthly throne for a heavenly king. But Moses wasn't a craftsman. He was a shepherd turned prophet. So God appointed someone else for the construction. His name was Bezalel. In Hebrew, that name means "in the shadow of God." And here's what makes him remarkable. Bezalel is the first person in all of Scripture described as being filled with the Spirit of God. Not for preaching, not for prophecy, for craftsmanship, for woodwork, for metalwork, for the sacred art of building. Alongside him worked Oholiab from the tribe of Dan, one of the lowest-ranking tribes in Israel, the royal tribe and the common tribe, working side by side, because the throne of God would be built by all of his people. But here's the question that should haunt us. Why would an infinite, omnipresent God need a box? He fills the universe. The heavens cannot contain him. Why would he confine himself to 2.5 cubits of wood and gold? The answer would unfold across centuries of blood, fire, and divine encounters. The ark was never meant to contain God. It was meant to be his footstool, his meeting point, the exact location where heaven and earth would intersect. And what Bezalel was about to build would become the most sacred and most dangerous object on the planet. So what exactly did Bezalel build? Let's break it down, layer by layer, detail by detail. The dimensions came directly from God. Exodus chapter 25, verse 10. 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, 1.5 cubits high. In modern measurements, that's roughly 45 inches long, 27 inches wide, 1.5 cubits high, and 27 inches tall. Here's the reality check most people miss. This wasn't some massive golden monument. The Ark of the Covenant was roughly the size of a large hope chest. You could fit it in the back of a modern SUV. 4 men could carry it on their shoulders, which is exactly how God designed it to be moved. The wood came first. Not cedar, not oak. God specified acacia. In Hebrew, shittim wood. If you've ever been to the Sinai desert, you know why. Acacia is one of the only trees that survives there. It grows twisted and gnarled from fighting for every drop of water. The wood is incredibly dense, naturally saturated with oils that repel insects, and virtually immune to rot. In the harshest desert on Earth, acacia refuses to decay. The theological symbolism wasn't lost on ancient readers. This wood represented humanity, rising from barren ground, shaped by hardship, but incorruptible. Scholars have long seen it as a portrait of the coming Messiah, fully human, yet without the corruption of sin. Then came the gold. Bezalel covered the acacia box with pure gold. But here's the detail that stops you cold. God commanded gold on the inside, too. Think about that. The inside. The part no human eye would ever see. The part where you could cut corners and no one would ever know. But God would know. The message was unmistakable. Divine standard isn't about appearances. It's absolute, from the inside out. No hidden corruption, no private compromises. Wood and gold, humanity and divinity. 2 natures fused into one. Finally, a golden rim, called zer in Hebrew, encircled the top edge. Practically, it kept the lid from sliding off. Symbolically, it was a crown. A throne always wears a crown. But the box itself was only the foundation. What sat on top of it was even more significant. The lid had a name, and the name tells you everything. In Hebrew, it was called kaporet. The root word is kafar, which means to cover or to atone. This wasn't just a lid. The very name declared its function. The covering. The place of atonement. The mercy seat. And here's where the construction shifted dramatically. The box below was acacia wood covered in gold, human material wrapped in divine glory. But the mercy seat itself was different. This was solid gold, no wood at all. Pure, unbroken divinity from edge to edge. On each end of this golden platform stood a cherub, one of the mysterious angelic beings that guard the presence of God. But these weren't carved separately and then attached. Exodus 25 is specific. The cherubim were beaten work, hammered from the same single block of gold as the mercy seat itself. They were born from the same metal. Inseparable. Their posture was precise. Wings stretched upward until the tips touched over the center, forming a canopy. Wings also extended forward, overshadowing the golden surface below. Their faces turned toward one another. And, this detail matters, they looked down. Their gaze fixed permanently on the mercy seat. Why down? Why would these heavenly beings stare at a golden surface? Because of what was beneath it, and what would be sprinkled on top of it. Beneath the mercy seat, inside the ark, lay the stone tablets of the law, the 10 Commandments, the perfect standard of divine justice that no human had ever kept. Those tablets were an indictment, a guilty verdict written in stone. But once a year, blood would be sprinkled on top of that mercy seat. And when the cherubim looked down, they wouldn't see condemnation. They would see covering. They would see sacrifice. They would see mercy triumphing over judgment. There's one more detail. God told Moses, "There, above the mercy seat, between the 2 cherubim, I will meet with you." The throne was invisible. The gold was the footstool. And the empty space above the blood-sprinkled cover? That was where the Shekinah glory dwelt. Judgment and mercy met on that golden surface, and mercy won. The ark was complete, but what was placed inside it would make it the most sacred object on earth. According to the book of Hebrews, chapter 9, verse 4, 3 items rested within that golden chest during the wilderness years. First, the 2 stone tablets, the 10 commandments themselves, not written by Moses, written by the finger of God. Exodus 31 says it plainly, tablets of stone inscribed by the finger of God. This was the constitution of the covenant, the moral foundation of the entire relationship between God and Israel. Second, a golden pot containing manna, about 2 to 3 liters of that mysterious bread from heaven that had fed Israel for 40 years. God commanded Moses to preserve it as a memorial. But it was a complicated memorial, because the manna also reminded Israel of their constant complaining, their ingratitude, their short memories. Third, Aaron's rod that budded. After a rebellion led by a man named Korah, who challenged Aaron's priesthood, God settled the dispute dramatically. 12 staffs were placed before the ark overnight, 1 for each tribe. By morning, Aaron's staff had not only sprouted buds, but blossoms and fully ripe almonds. Dead wood producing fruit overnight. A resurrection before resurrection had a name. 3 witnesses. The law that condemned. The bread that sustained. The rod that proved God's chosen authority. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Fast forward nearly 5 centuries. Solomon has built his magnificent temple. The priests carry the ark into the Holy of Holies with great ceremony. And then we read this in 1 Kings chapter 8, verse 9. There was nothing in the ark except the 2 tablets of stone. Nothing except the tablets. The manna was gone. Aaron's rod was gone. What happened during those 500 years? Did the Philistines steal them when they captured the ark? Were they removed when the men of Beth Shemesh opened the lid and died? Some scholars argue they were never inside the ark at all, that the Hebrew phrasing meant they were placed before it, not within it. We may never know. But by Solomon's day, only the law remained. The question is, why did God allow even those to disappear? The answer would come later, much later. The ark wasn't storage. It was an altar, the most important altar in existence. Once a year, on the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, the ark became the most critical location on the entire planet. 364 days a year, the Holy of Holies remained sealed, dark, silent, empty of human presence, but filled with invisible glory. On day 365, one man walked through that heavy curtain, the high priest, and he did not know if he would walk back out. Jewish tradition says they tied a rope around his ankle, just in case. If he died inside, someone would need to pull the body out, because no one else could enter, ever. The preparation was extensive. The high priest bathed completely, a full ritual purification. Then he removed his magnificent golden robes, the jeweled breastplate, the ornate turban. He dressed instead in simple white linen, no gold, no jewels, no symbols of rank. Before the throne of God, even the high priest stripped away every claim to status. He carried 3 things through that curtain: a censer filled with burning coals and incense, blood from a bull sacrificed for his own sins, and blood from a goat sacrificed for the sins of the nation. His first act was survival. He poured incense on those coals, until thick clouds of smoke filled the room, completely obscuring the mercy seat. Leviticus 16 explains why. The cloud of incense will cover the mercy seat that is on the testimony, so that he will not die. The smoke wasn't for atmosphere, it was armor. The high priest could not look directly at the space where God's glory dwelt and live. Then came the blood. He sprinkled it on the east side of the mercy seat, then 7 times before it. 7, the number of divine completion. And in that moment, something cosmic happened. The law beneath the lid demanded justice. The blood on top declared the debt paid. When God looked down from between the cherubim, he didn't see Israel's failures. He saw the covering. The Hebrew word kaporeth became the Greek word hilasterion. Paul used that exact word in Romans 3:25 to describe Jesus, our propitiation. Every year, blood on gold. Until one day, blood on wood. And the shadow became reality. The ark wasn't just a ritual object locked in a dark room. When this throne moved, nations trembled. The Jordan River. 40 years of wandering were over. The Promised Land lay just across the Jordan River. But there was a problem. It was spring, harvest season, and the Jordan was at flood stage. No bridges, no boats. More than 2 million people waiting on the eastern bank. God's instructions were strange. The priests carrying the ark would go first. Not the army, not the scouts. The throne of God would lead the invasion. The moment their feet touched the water's edge, the river stopped. Not gradually, instantly. The biblical account says the water piled up at a city called Adam, miles upstream. The ark stood in the middle of the dry riverbed, while the entire nation walked across on solid ground. The ark wasn't being transported. It was commanding creation itself. The walls of Jericho. The first city in Canaan was a fortress, walls so thick that houses were built into them. Israel had no siege equipment, no battering rams, no military engineers, but they had the ark. For 6 days, the army marched around the city once each day in complete silence, the ark in the center. On day 7, they circled 7 times, then 7 trumpet blasts, then 1 unified shout from every Israelite voice. The walls collapsed, not inward as you'd expect from a military assault, but outward, down and out, into the ground. No swords brought down Jericho, only the presence of God. The Philistine nightmare. But what happens when the ark falls into enemy hands? At the Battle of Ebenezer, Israel was crushed. 30,000 soldiers dead. The Philistines captured the ark as a trophy and carried it to the temple of their god Dagon in the city of Ashdod. This was standard ancient practice. You put your enemy's god at the feet of your own god. You prove who's stronger. The next morning, the priests entered Dagon's temple and froze. Dagon had fallen on his face before the ark, prostrate, as if worshiping. They set the statue back up. The following morning, Dagon was down again, but this time his head and both hands had broken off and lay on the threshold. Only his fish body remained. The God of Israel was not a prisoner. He was an invader. Then the plagues began. The people of Ashdod broke out in tumors. The Hebrew word is ophel. Rats swarmed the land, destroying crops and spreading disease. The symptoms described: swollen lymph nodes, rodent infestation, rapid death read like a textbook description of bubonic plague. The ark moved to Gath. The plague followed. The ark moved to Ekron. The plague followed. After 7 months, the Philistines had enough. "Send it away before it kills us all!" They made golden images of their tumors and their rats, 5 of each, 1 for each Philistine city, and placed them in the ark as guilt offerings. They put the ark on a cart pulled by 2 cows that had never been yoked, cows whose calves had been taken away. Naturally, those cows should have turned back toward their crying calves. Instead, they walked in a straight line toward Israelite territory, as they went, but never turning. Even pagan priests recognized this was not a normal object. Uzzah's death. Years later, King David wanted to bring the ark to Jerusalem. He was so excited, he built a brand new cart for it. Music played, people danced, celebration filled the air. Then the oxen stumbled. The ark tilted, and Uzzah, one of the men walking beside the cart, reached out his hand to steady it. He dropped dead on the spot. David was terrified, angry, confused. Uzzah was helping. His intentions were good. But the law had been clear all along. Numbers chapter 7. The ark was to be carried on poles on the shoulders of Levites. No carts, no touching. David had copied the Philistine method instead of following God's instructions. Good intentions don't override God's protocols. Holiness has rules. 3 months later, David tried again. This time, the Levites carried it properly, poles on shoulders. David himself stripped off his royal robes, wore a simple linen ephod, and danced before the ark with all his might. A king becoming a servant. That's how you approach the throne of God.
For over 400 years, the Ark sat in the Holy of Holies of Solomon's temple. Priests ministered before it. Kings sought its blessing. The smoke of incense rose. The blood of atonement was sprinkled. And then, silence. In 586 BC, the Babylonian army under Nebuchadnezzar broke through the walls of Jerusalem. They burned the temple to the ground. They carried away everything of value. The Babylonian scribes were meticulous. They recorded every item taken as plunder: the bronze pillars, the golden lampstands, the silver basins, every cup and censer. But the Ark of the Covenant? Not mentioned, not listed as captured, not described as destroyed, not melted down for gold, simply absent. The most sacred object in Israel's history vanishes from the historical record without a single word. For 25 centuries, treasure hunters have searched. Ethiopia claims to have it. Some say Jeremiah hid it in a cave. Others believe it lies beneath the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, waiting to be discovered. But what if we're asking the wrong question? What if we're not supposed to find it? Because here's what most people miss. The prophet Jeremiah, writing before the Babylonian destruction, recorded something stunning in chapter 3, verse 16. "In those days, when your numbers have increased greatly in the land, declares the Lord, people will no longer say, 'The Ark of the Covenant of the Lord.' It will never enter their minds or be remembered. It will not be missed, nor will another one be made." Read that again slowly. They will no longer speak of it. It won't enter their minds. It won't be remembered. It won't be missed. And no one will ever build another. God Himself declared the ark obsolete, not lost, transcended. A day was coming when the presence of God would no longer be confined to a golden box carried by priests into a dark room once a year. His Spirit would dwell not in temples made with hands, but in human hearts, everywhere, all the time, with everyone who believes. And in the final book of the Bible, the Apostle John sees a vision. Revelation chapter 11, verse 19. Then God's temple in heaven was opened, and within His temple was seen the ark of His covenant. The earthly ark was always a copy, a shadow cast by a heavenly original. And that original? It was never lost. It's still there, safe in the throne room of the universe. The mystery resolves, not with discovery, but with revelation. The ark was never the destination. It was always pointing forward. The mercy seat where blood was sprinkled, it pointed to a cross. The space where God's presence dwelt, it pointed to a person. His name is Jesus. And the blood? It's been sprinkled once, for all, forever. The Ark of the Covenant was never just a golden box. It was the throne room of the universe compressed into 2.5 cubits of acacia and gold. It was where heaven touched earth, where judgment met mercy, where the infinite God made Himself tangibly present to finite, failing, fumbling humanity. But Jeremiah was right. We don't need to search for it anymore. The presence that once required blood sacrifices and clouds of incense now lives inside everyone who believes. The ark was the question. Jesus is the answer. What surprised you most about the ark's true purpose? Was it the materials, the rituals, the prophecy? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one.